Hello, I'm Ethan Chase, and a New York organization development coach, and I want to talk today about a topic that I'm really excited to pursue. And it's the notion of what is the purpose of the modern era business. And so it may seem like a little bit of an odd question to pose, but in the 21st century, with all of the trends and developments, this is critically important right now, especially for folks who are considering starting businesses as well as leaders of existing businesses. So, what's the future of business? Turns out it may just be a sense of purpose and not purely profit. I want to start out by going to the World Economic Forum because this is a really important uh, starting point. So, before COVID, the World Economic Forum comes out with this pretty intense and thought-provoking topic of a body of research it conducted. The future of business, turns out, is purpose, a sense of purpose and cause, not just generating profit. So if you follow my YouTube channel, you know that this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, but also I've been covering lately with organizations like Kind and Honest Tea and Chef Andreas's World Central Kitchen. So, from the World Economic Forum, we live in extremely turbulent times. Poverty, inequality, youth unemployment, climate change are all among the challenges, just at a minimum, that we face as a society. In business, CEOs have gone from being symbols of aspiration, people really looked up to them, to objects of intense scrutiny. Even younger, cooler entrepreneurs, the kickstarters of this shared gig economy, are now being asked questions about the impact that their companies are having on society. So trust in business is the ultimate currency. It drives your organization's reputational brand and enables you to do or prevents you from doing many things as an organization. So let's focus on millennials, those individuals born between 1980 and 1996, right? As consumers, they're the ones who are driving this trend from business to historically pursuing profit, shareholder value, to now cause and a more humane capitalism. 40% of millennials polled on the World Economic Forum survey, polled by Deloitte Millennial Survey 2018, believe that the goal of business should be to improve society. 40%, 2 out of 5, believe that an organization's role, business's role, is to make society better. So this is worth considering. So by 2020, so 4 years ago, millennials were anticipated to make up 40% of all consumers, influencing about 40 billion in annual sales. So let's just call this what it is: profit with a sense of purpose. It's going to and becoming the new norm of business operation. So up to this point, the social enterprise and impact investment have been driving this concept, which is, again, profit with purpose. But somehow, up until right now, even post COVID, it's been somewhat of a niche business development. Not anymore. Now it's all set to change. CEOs of the future will want their companies to be recognized as a force for doing good. So let's go to this Deloitte Millennial Survey conducted back in 2018. Millennials see business leaders as having more positive impact potential than religious and political leaders. So if you take a look down at the chart, you'll see that when it comes to NGOs, business, religious, political leaders, millennial survey, which do you think can have a positive impact on society or a negative impact? And you'll see that right there in the middle, business leaders. Business leaders have a millennial 44% favorability or ability to impact positively society. Religious leaders, 33%. And really it should not be a surprise. Political leaders, 19% of millennial survey believe that they could have a positive impact. So business leaders, if you weren't aware before, you've been warned now. So Unilever, Great example, multinational corporation, global business enterprise. It's a good bellwether or indicator of how major conglomerates might soon be developing a purpose-led strategy for their core business purpose. Their outgoing CEO, Paul Pullman, was one of the first business leaders to give a new, more profound meaning to the word sustainability, regarding it not just as the right thing to do, but an essential aspect of future business growth. So I want to focus on that. Doing the right thing, not just from a positive impact on society and the world perspective, but businesses doing the right thing ethically because it drives successful financial performance. I've been saying this for years, since I wrote my second book, The Compassionate Organization, back in 2018. So I want to talk about going back 14 years, or 15 now. Pullman, CEO, Unilever, launches a sustainable living development plan. The goal of Unilever worldwide, some of the goals, to help more than 1 billion people improve their hygiene and living conditions, reduce the impact of Unilever's operations on the environment, and promoting gender parity in all of its factories. So for Pullman, CEO of a multinational corporation, the incentive to do this shift from shareholder value to stakeholder value, the purpose is absolutely clear. Well, listen to this. Business cannot thrive in a world in which people don't. Protect people and the planet, and you will protect the future of your enterprise. Pretty straightforward. Unilever no longer has a separate corporate social responsibility department. We're not just like DE&I putting it aside in a corner to say, we do this on its marketing collateral. Instead, Unilever has a business model with sustainability baked into its core foundational ideology. Unilever's net income back in 2017 was $6.8 billion. Has Pullman revolutionized the sector? Not quite, but there's an emerging trend for more corporates to take sustainability issues seriously, changing their business strategies in light of this. And as we move on from a global pandemic, COVID 2019, as we move on from that, this is really, really mission critical. So take the rise of B corporations. These are companies that are certified on the basis of social responsibility and environmental performance standards. Launched in 2006, the B Corp movement, led by founder of B Lab, Bart Houlihan, who I had on the Chasing the Dream podcast, that was made up of small to mid-sized businesses across 60 countries and increasingly includes larger multinationals like Patagonia and Innocent Drinks, who was acquired in 2013 by Coke. This is big because when I spoke to Bart a few weeks ago, certified B corporations were now 10,000 organizations strong. So this is a growing movement. Danone, one of the world's largest food companies, has made a public commitment of certifying B Corp by 2030. It's a very intense process for an organization to get that B Corp certification. They have to go through a significant self-reporting process. So, as one example of how organizations are thinking about how to be more socially responsible or humane capitalist models, Danone now analyzes the habits and health issues of its customers in 52 countries and adapts its products based on those consumer patterns. It recently added vitamins to one of its best-selling cheeses after researching the diets of young people in Brazil. So we're at a critical juncture, according to the World Economic Forum. According to last year's Edelman Trust Barometer, 64% of people globally expect CEOs to lead on social change rather than waiting for government intervention. We know that when government is expected to step into the void and help organizations become more socially conscious, they don't. Governments are not equipped. They're not capable. And a significant 84% of the survey respondents, the Edelman Trust Barometer, 84% expect CEOs to influence policy debates on social issues. Think, for example, of some of my recent videos about major corporations faced with right-wing ideological pressure, doing away with diversity, equity, inclusion programs, even as millennials and Gen Zs are expecting that the organizations they work for and buy from be more diverse to match their own millennial and Gen Z values. So there's a disconnect there. Increasingly, companies are going beyond merely government compliance standards. Nearly 90% of the world's biggest companies are reporting on their sustainability performance using metrics established by the Global Reporting Initiative, established back in October 2016. So you see the pivot, right? It's like turning a battleship. Organizations from historically the past 50 years of being in existence solely on generating profit and profit for shareholders to a new model. And that's what this video is about today, talking about this new model. So the model is what we call for-benefit organizations, not just for profit. So you can see on the screen down the little chart below, 4 organizational structures that we identify or categorize based on 2 considerations. What's their primary purpose? And how are they funded? What's their existence funding model? So you look at the public sector, right? The government. Their purpose is to do good for their citizenry, although that would be of debate now in January 29 of 2025 in terms of what, at least here in the United States, our government is doing to its people. But that aside, the public sector purpose is to serve the public good, the public interest. And the revenue is the IRS, right? It generates revenue through collecting taxes from individuals and organizations, except those corporations who evade paying taxes. The private sector, that's where my focus has been in terms of my Chasing the Dream podcast and these 475 videos I've produced, is organizations who used to and now still exist to generate profit. Their mandate was create profit for their shareholders, their investors. And they did that through earnings. Well, what about in the social sector, the nonprofit world? Their responsibility, like the public sector, is from a purpose standpoint to do good for society. Legacy is to promote causes and have a positive impact. And the way that they do this from a funding model perspective is they generate earnings, which are funneled back into the nonprofit, and they receive charitable gifts and donations from organizations and individuals. But here's what I want to talk about today. What if there was a new model, right? What if there was a 4th sector, what we call a for-benefit sector, where their cause is doing good for society, but they too are deriving their revenue that fuels their operations through profit. So said differently, there's said the presence of 2 defining characteristics of 4 benefits from other organizational models. The primary commitment to social causes, social purpose, together with a predominantly earned income business model. So I want to talk about primary and secondary characteristics of these organizations. So social purpose, a commitment to mission is embedded in the organization's DNA. Fiduciary duty is tied to its mission. Earned income, how they get there operationally to be able to have a purpose to benefit society, is the sale of their goods and services that generates their income. But what do we look at places like Kind, Chobani, Patagonia, Tom's Shoes? What do we look for in these organizations? Inclusive ownership. Ownership rights are allocated among stakeholders. And that's why I say empowering employees is such a strong way to fuel organizational growth, is putting power from shareholders, external stakeholders, into the people who are responsible for getting the work done. Stakeholder governance, decision rights regarding information control. Control are distributed among stakeholder constituencies. So we take power out of the senior leadership team who historically have existed solely to achieve financial performance for the benefit of those shareholders, to all stakeholders, groups of individuals who interact with and have benefit from the relationship with the organization. Fair compensation. This is still in 2025. I can't believe we're having this discussion, but okay, the gender gap, the gender pay gap, fair compensation, taking advantage of employees, undercompensating them because we think about them as assets, little widgets, photocopiers with limbs to produce, reasonable returns, limitations on investment returns, protect the organization's ability, social environmental responsibility. We seek those out in organizations like what Unilever, for example, is trying to do. Or a company in Southern California, I interviewed the son of the founder. I had Tim Roofer come on Chasing the Dream at a company called the Morning Star Company. Those people who turn tomato-based products. These are the kinds of organizations we want to look at. Transparency, that they're completely candid about their work with the environment and communities. The honest communication dialogue that flows in and out of those kinds of socially responsible organizations. So these are some of the secondary characteristics. So imagine if in the old 20th century, you either had government who's indicated they're not capable of protecting the public good. They're just not. Private sector driven by shareholder value, and the not-for-profit world generated by serving the public good. But what if there was a fourth entity that took bits and pieces of the best elements of organizations driven by performance metrics, generating revenue, but funneling that revenue back into society, not taking away for shareholders, but funneling back in? And we call those fourth sector organizations, not just for profit or for benefit. For benefits are all around us, but it's difficult to see until you know how to look for them. Unlike traditional for-profits and nonprofits, which are legally distinct and recognized organizational entities, for benefits lack a kind of formal recognition and a common definition because the sector is emerging now. It's happening now, right in front of our eyes. It's emerging in a highly distributed and fragmented way all around the world. This has led to varied and often confusing nomenclature and definitions, which obscure the magnitude and breadth of for-benefit activity. And that's what I'm hoping to shine a light on today. For-benefits are referred to by many different names, such as public benefit corporations, social enterprises, community interest companies, social businesses, hybrid organizations. You see this, right? You may have heard of these organizational labels. So for benefits represent a new paradigm in organizational theory and design. At all levels, they link two concepts, which up until now, we in business have had false dichotomy in other models. So the prevailing or old way of thinking about this was private interests. Let's make money for the people who invest in our business and reward them. That's private interest. And public benefit, doing good for society, the world at large. Why do those have to be mutually exclusive, is my point. Why do we have to have them as separate driving, motivating forces of business? They seek to maximize benefit to all stakeholders in the public benefit. And because of their architecture, they can embody some of the best attributes of other organizational entities. They strive to be transparent, accountable, effective, efficient, democratic, inclusive, open, and cooperative. For this new fourth type of organizational structure called for benefit to move from an emergent or relatively new model to widespread economic and cultural reality, recognition in the law is a fundamental requirement. Most countries' legal and economic systems allow either for-profit or nonprofit activity, but constrain the blending of the two. And this is not me, and this is not my subjective opinion. Although I bought into this model, it comes directly from the fourth sector group. And take a look at them. I will have a link to all the resources below in the description of the video. But for now, understand that that's the starting point. So I want to talk a little bit about for business enterprises. So for benefit enterprises bring business minds, the kind of generate revenue, efficient, operational efficiency, return on investments, leverage of employees as greatest competitive advantage. The for benefit enterprise, bringing that business acumen into mission driven organizations, a blending of both. More mission driven organizations are developing a sustainable business model to support their good work to society. So, this focus I'm just going to share with you is from Boyden, but I want to take it just beyond conversation around sustainability as one metric or aspect of social organizations. It's the whole way a business can operate to have a great positive impact for society. Over the last decade, kind of like just before COVID to after COVID, we've hit the high point on this. There's been a focus on a growing sector of our economy called hybrid enterprises, with a commercial business that funds a social mission. What makes them different from traditional non-for-profits and for-profits is that they're both. That's the key takeaway from this video today. There is yet another option. It's not just for-profit or non-profit, where those have kind of butt heads or served two different masters, two different models. There's a new model that you as an organization, you as a business, as entrepreneurs, you can start to think about this. A commercial business that funds a social mission. What makes them different from traditional not-for-profit and for-profits is that they're a little bit of both, and it ties the leadership of this organization's fiduciary responsibility to worthy causes, blending both worlds. These for-benefit organizations are seen as a fourth sector of our economy, beyond the established three of for-profit, nonprofit, and government entity. And they cross over these for-benefit organizations into those three other areas. It's a new model. While for-benefit enterprises are growing in popularity, they've been around for a long time. So what's some examples? Think about Goodwill Industries, right? It's an iconic brand and an institution that was founded in 1902. The Federation of Goodwill supports its mission through stores, physical and now retail, and online retail across 17 countries that generate in excess of $4 billion in annual retail sales. Well, what about other organizational entities for benefit? Well, what about Public Interest Registry, PIR? They're the wholesale provider of the .org or domain names all around the world. This global enterprise partners with companies like GoDaddy and Network Solutions. Its profits are invested back into bringing internet access to remote areas of developing world and other missions for the nonprofit internet society. So those are examples of these for-benefit organizations. So what do we need? What do we need as characteristics of this new paradigm of business called for benefit, or not just for profit? There are three universal attributes that are the prerequisites for success as you're thinking about this new option of business structure for benefit. One, mission-minded sensibility. The executive team, the founders, the leadership team should have a natural hardwired connection to that organization's vision and mission, an emotional connection, born of personal values experience. I already talked about this with several organizations. I talked about Honest Tea, World Central Kitchen. I've talked about this at Kind. I'll be covering it, and I've talked about it with the founder, Yvonne Chouinard of Patagonia. So this exists, right? This mission-minded sensibility for benefit organizations. Second prerequisite is a balanced business savvy. There's more than one bottom line when we're talking about for benefit organizations. In addition to that prevailing bottom line in measure of income metric, your board of directors, your leadership teams measure success in for benefit organizations in other non-financial ways. You quantify in terms of the organization's contribution to your mission statement. These additional metrics result in a double or even triple bottom line. And this is what I said when I conducted 10 years of research into my book, The Compassion Organization. I proved by researching over 200 countries and 7,000 plus organizations, that those organizations who financially outperform their competitors, the number one or number two top financial performance organizations in any industry or sector, based in any country in the world, for the most part, they all share one universal attribute. They have compassionate organizational cultures. So that's a second prerequisite, is balanced business savvy. The third requirement for these benefit organizations is cultural transparency. I want to read this one a little bit more slowly. For purposes of government, the current Trump administration 2.0, and these corporations who are dealing with pressure exerted from the right on them by reducing or doing away with their diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging formal programs and values. Even in the best run for benefits, where an executive team is addressing a dynamic environment and disparate stakeholder views, maintaining a competitive business strategy while remaining mission-minded can be a challenge. Of course, the mere concept of more than one bottom line engenders a range of subjective or biased measures of success. So when we're going beyond financial performance to other considerations of how we treat other stakeholders, how we treat our employees, our culture, impacts in terms of funding social causes, oh yeah, and financial performance, that can create a lot of stress, right? The executive team in these for-benefit organizations are continually tweaking the optimal path forward because of the trade-offs. You're balancing, remember, financial performance and the need to do good. You're balancing. Management must not only communicate business decisions, but be transparent about how they are made and impart an understanding of their implications and the ecosystem of stakeholders. So broadly speaking, for-benefit enterprise management is for a select profile of leaders. So if you're a certain kind of leader, you're going to be attracted to this. So I want to talk a little bit about parameters or framework on for-benefit organizations. It's a new model for sure. In 2025, we are headfast into a new direction of business ownership, business foundation, and business values. We're going in a new direction. Chart the course. It's happening. You're either jumping on the train as it's pulling out of the station, or you're left behind. So we're talking about humanistic capitalism, right? Going back to Wikipedia as a starting point. The concept of humanistic capitalism is that it seeks to unite humanism, specifically the safety and health needs of people and the environment, with market forces and a market-based economy. It's often seen as a middle ground. You may think of for benefits as this middle ground position between the ideas of that modern capitalism, which we've been in kind of for decades, and a democratic or humane socialism. I am going to segue in a bit into a gentleman who I discovered decades ago by the name of Muhammad Yunus. And you should know that individual too, and his work, his seminal work. Muhammad Yunus describes humanistic capitalism as a socially conscious business world where investors are content to recoup their investments, but they don't expect additional dividends. They're going to get a return on their investment, but the idea behind humanistic capitalism is linked with the idea that fundamental changes must take place in economies and societies, I might add today, as humanistic capitalism requires that there be a blending of the nonprofit and the for-profit worlds. So let's talk about social business, humanistic social business. Social business was first defined by Nobel Peace Prize winner and a laureate professor, Muhammad Yunus. And so he's written 4 books, but I want to give you the synopsis of what social business is all about. Created and designed to address a specific social problem. It's non-loss, non-dividend company, meaning we don't operate to lose money, right? We're not suckers. We don't operate to lose money, but we don't generate dividends. It's financially self-sustainable as a business model, and profits that are achieved by the organization are reinvested into the business itself or used to pay it forward to start other social cause businesses. The aim of increasing social impact. For example, expanding a company's ability to positively impact or reach, improving products or services in other ways to subsidize a social mission. Unlike a profit maximizing or for profit business model, the prime aim of a social business is not to maximize profits, although generating profits is desirable. Furthermore, business owners are not receiving any dividend out of the business's profits. So again, the model constructed with Muhammad Yunus as kind of a foundational kind of driver of this new path forward for organizations. The path forward is not simply the pursuit of profit. It's generating profits in the pursuit of having a positive impact. And that's powerful, powerful stuff. So I do want to go into this model of beyond capitalism, how not-for-profit entities can be successful businesses. So Donnie McClurkin, I want to highlight this. Going back to before COVID, this is a really interesting article from Donnie McClurkin. So beyond capitalism lies the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. Beyond capitalism lies the not-for-profit world or for-benefit organizations. So there's a little bit of kind of a reaction to capitalism as the prevailing business model for the past, let's say, 50 plus years. At the heart of this failing capitalist system is a for-profit ethic. Based on the myth that humans are mostly selfish and competitive, the for-profit ethic says the best way to incentivize innovation and facilitate economic activity is to appeal to these people's human beings' self-interest. This manifests in the for-profit business model central to our current economy, where owners and investors go into a business expecting a portion of the company's profits in the form of dividends or returns that come back to them for them investing in the business, right? Or stock options or shares, owning tangible pieces of the organization's livelihood. In essence, capitalism ensures that we live in a for-profit world, right? That's, according to Donnie, the prevailing model. Yes, this for-profit ethic and way of conducting business has led to unbelievable socioeconomic inequality, capital gains and company dividends, the largest contributor to income divides. Look no farther, as Donnie says, into the current Donald Trump administration with 13 billionaires. Look at what executive orders and proposed bills they're putting to Congress that literally are going after individuals in this society, taking away rights. I mean, this is something that's been going on, and this is what the manifest reaction or result of a capitalist construct is. Do you imagine when the wealthiest in our business society have control of the levers of government, the public sector? You're seeing it now. You're seeing it every day. Our federal government is sending home DE&I employees, federal DE&I employees, and saying, okay, we'll pay you temporarily, but you're not going to be part of the future of this administration. It's happening, okay? Furthermore, the social stratification that results from global financial inequality is tied to ecological devastation, driving the ongoing march towards full systems collapse over the coming 50 years. So Donnie's calling it, right? Capitalism is not a sustainable societal model for the world. Most commonly suggested alternative to this dysfunction is greater market regulation. Governments are not capable of regulating the private sector. They're not, they haven't, they won't. Sorry. So others argue for, according to Donnie, a conscious capitalism, and they see such approaches as B Corp certification. Again, there's that organizational entity founded by Bart Houlihan at B Lab. B Corp certification and shared values is the best way to get to a more socially conscious business enterprise. But while these avenues bring attention to important questions of sustainability, such approaches fail to address, here we go, the root problem. Although new forms of for-profit business seek to balance people, planet, and profit, they continue to treat profit as the end in and of itself, rather than a means to an end, encouraging the destructive greed inherent in a system that relies on the privatization for profit of profit. Nor can capitalism's innovative potential come to the rescue. Not only are the levels of innovation required to avoid collapse totally unrealistic in a growth-based system, it's the for-profit ethic that created the very problems we now see. Well, what's the alternative? This is Don McClurkin. What's the alternative? Fortunately, the dominant story about human nature is changing. Research increasingly shows that under the right conditions, human nature has a tendency towards coexistence and cooperation. We're witnessing the rise of a workforce increasingly motivated by purpose. Thank you, millennials and Gen Zs. We're realizing the potential of an existing model of enterprise called not for profit that encourages the best aspects of human nature and, as I said, blends together the best attributes of the for-profit world and the not-for-profit world. Okay? And it's a new world order of business. There's a rising tide. Organization for rising tide. There's a rising tide of entrepreneurial companies that have business plans, make profits, pay good wages, yet are legally incorporated as not for profit. They're a bold response to a common misunderstanding compounded by use of the words nonprofit is equal to charity. That not-for-profit entities cannot be successful businesses. We can marry both. That's Donnie's point. So now I want to talk in the time remaining about Muhammad Yunus, or if you don't know Muhammad Yunus, shame on you. But let's talk about Muhammad Yunus, the godfather of micro lending. So I want to talk a little bit about this idea that he created a global phenomenon and billion-dollar enterprise. Professor Muhammad Yunus co-founded Yunus Social Business and currently serves chairman of the board. He's the founder of Grameen Bank. This is when I first discovered the work that he was doing. And he's the godfather of microcredit, micro-lending, an economic movement that has helped lift millions of families around the world out of poverty. Today, Grameen Bank has over 8.4 million members, 97% are women or female, and has lent over 12.5 billion US dollars since its inception back in 2006. Interesting with the timing, B-Lab was formed and other social business cause organizational entities. In 2006, the Norwegian Nobel Committee jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize to Professor Yunus and to Grameen Bank for their efforts to create economic and social development from below. What was he known for? He's the creator of social businesses, and since 2006 is focused on spreading and implementing this concept. He's written 4 books about micro-lending and social business, Banker to the Poor, A World Without Poverty, Building Social Business, and A World of 3 Zeros. What is micro-lending and microcredit? Instead of giving a significant amount of money to a business startup, maybe millions or tens of millions of dollars, take a relatively small amount of money, $100, $500, let's say, and give it to an organization, several women in a remote village, let's say of Bangladesh, where he's from, and have them start a business in their little home of making head wraps. The little money in a destitute area of the world has a significantly greater impact than funding a much larger startup somewhere in a post-industrial first world nation. So it's putting money, relatively small amounts, all over planting seeds in socioeconomically challenged areas and watching these people who have absolutely nothing rise up. And that's a powerful, powerful new model. So I want to kind of go into a little bit more of the history of not just for profit. So strategy business. Going back 2009. Okay, so this is just 3 years after the inception of Grameen Bank in 2006. When Muhammad Yunus and the Grameen Bank received the Nobel Peace Prize in October 2006, one endeavor lifted into the limelight was Grameen Danone Foods Limited. There's that company again. This was a path-breaking collaborative enterprise launched that year as a 50-50 joint venture between Groupe Danone, the US $16 billion multinational yogurt maker, and Grameen companies that Muhammad Yunus had co-founded. Yunus called the joint venture a social business, which he said could be a pioneering model for a more humane form of capitalism. As Yunus explained in his book, Creating a World Without Poverty, Social Business in the Future of Capitalism, a social business is a profit-making company driven by a much larger mission than rewarding its shareholders. It carries the energy and the entrepreneurship of the private sector, raises capital through a market economy, and deals with products, services, customers, markets, expenses, and revenues. But with the profit maximization principle inherent in most capitalist for-profit companies removed and replaced with a social benefit core value ideology. So farmers delivering milk to a Grameen Danone yogurt factory in the village of Bogaru, Bangladesh, one of many small community enterprises established by the joint venture between Grameen Bank and Danone. Powerful, powerful stuff. And the ability to use a business structured business model to make the world a better place. The mission of Grameen Danone Foods is to bring affordable nutrition to malnourished children in Bangladesh with a fortified yogurt under the brand name Shokti Doi, which means yogurt for power in Bengali, the country's language. It began October 2005 when Frank Ribaud, CEO of Group Danone, took Yunus to lunch in Paris. We would like to find ways to help feed the poor, said Ribaud. Yunus suggested the revolutionary joint venture proposed that a new structure be invented for it, a hybrid between nonprofit and for-profit. So lastly, today, I want to talk a little bit about Yunus, Muhammad Yunus's social business model. It's a nonprofit organization, the Yunus Social Business Entity, with an impact investing arm, Yunus Funds, and a corporate social innovation consulting arm, Yunus Corporate Innovation. So prior to co-founding Yunus Social Business, Muhammad Yunus pioneered the field of microfinance, microlending through Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. Muhammad Yunus, Grameen Bank, received the Nobel Peace Prize, October 2006, for establishing microfinance and trying to tackle poverty, taking on that challenge head on. Grameen Bank became the first of several social businesses he founded. So that's where we want to be. That's where we want to be right now as we head into 2025 and we talk about the notion of this new paradigm. Sure, start a business, plan, launch, grow a business, able to self-fund, able to generate a return that gets you out of the red and into the black. But understand that the driving force is not the pursuit of profit. The driving force is to use profit as a vehicle to fund things that you can do to make the world a much better place. So do me a favor. If you like the video, please hit the like button. Also, if you don't subscribe to my channel, please subscribe. You really do help me. You support the work that I'm doing. I have a lot of other focus spotlights that I'm going to be doing, shining a light on these amazing organizations and these amazing leaders who are moving their mindset beyond the pursuit of profit to leverage business as a cause to change the world for the better. And if you have any comments, share those too. I'd love to know what you think about this and other videos that I've produced. Thank you so much. Thank you for checking out the video, and I look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thank you.